A violent jolt came, as if a wall of water crashed onto the ship, then darkness swallowed the deck. They jumped into the freezing sea, holding each other's hands as lightning split the night sky. Golden survived the tiger, or be swallowed by the jungle. Thick smoke coiled into the sky, spelling SOS across the sand in letters wide enough for the heavens to read. Ethan and Claire, both from the USA, had set out on a cruise for their vacation. The sea shimmered under gentle currents, the wind was soft, and the deck was alive with laughter and the faint click of cameras, creating magic in the air. After sunrise, they admired the horizon's steady light, letting the itinerary fade in favor of capturing moments. Until midday, everything felt normal. Then the sky began to change. Thick clouds gathered in the distance, the wind picked up, and the waves seemed to draw deep breaths. The crew made safety announcements, lifeboats were checked, but the storm had already claimed its speed. Lightning split the sky, rain poured down, and the ship's bow pounded into waves. Ethan gripped the railing, Claire tightened her life jacket. They tried to keep calm, but the wind devoured all words. Violent jolt came, as if a wall of water crashed onto the ship. The deck became slick, the direction faltered, engines roared, then dimmed. From below, a wrenching sound rose as the metal groaned under strain. Alarms blared, chaos spread, and darkness thickened. In that moment, they realized this trip would be unforgettable, but not in the way they had imagined. The clouds closed in over the horizon, sealing their fate in the storm's grip. The waves grew taller, and another brutal hit tore through the ship's core. Water flooded the lower decks. The crew ordered everyone to abandon ship. Ethan and Claire trusted their life jackets, but below, panic ruled. Lifeboats were full, some overturned. The waves struck like open hands, knocking people down. They held each other's hands tightly, turned breath into strength, and jumped. The cold water burned their skin, but they kept moving, kicking in rhythm. Night fell quickly. Lightning raced across the sky. Rain became relentless. In the distance, a dark line hinted at land, and they swam toward it. Hours passed, their bodies heavy with exhaustion. Claire's leg was cut. Ethan's shoulder ached, yet their eyes stayed fixed forward. At last, soft sand met their feet. They staggered onto a small, deserted shore and collapsed. Saltwater choked out in coughs, breath steadied, and they looked around. No shelter, no paths, no people, only the raw truth that they were alive. They examined their injuries and understood the next step, survival. They marked the sand with prints, filled their lungs with air, and gathered the will to keep moving. At sunrise, hunger and thirst struck first. Ethan scanned the beach and spotted a cluster of coconut trees. Choosing a sturdy trunk, he climbed up, knocked down 2 coconuts, and tossed them to Claire. She cracked one open with a stone. Sweet water cooled their throats, and the flesh brought back a little strength, but not enough. The shoreline offered nothing else, so they turned toward the jungle. The damp earth made their shoes slip, but the thick greenery and calls of birds guided their way. They searched for edible signs, small berries in bushes, roots that smelled safe, and a stream where they could fill water. Footprints hinted that wild animals came here, so they listened carefully to every sound and slowed their pace. By midday, the shade shrank and heat grew heavy. Then, from behind thick bushes, came the sound of deep breathing. The ground trembled slightly. A metallic scent, like blood, hung in the air, and 2 golden eyes flashed through the leaves. Silence spread in an instant. A predator was close. Their minds weighed the choices: run, hide, or retreat toward the sea. They tightened their grip on what they carried and began stepping backward, mapping the escape route in their heads. The bushes tore apart, and a tiger leapt forward with terrifying grace. Stripes glinted, breath steamed, and time slowed to a crawl. Ethan motioned for Claire to step back. Instead of meeting the tiger's eyes, he began circling at an angle. Running would only invite the chase, so they moved slowly, bent low, retreating sideways. The tiger roared and lunged. Dirt and leaves sprayed into the air. Ethan slammed a rock into the ground to break its focus, while Claire gripped two long branches together to make her shape look larger. The predator paced, then shifted its stance. Their hearts pounded, but they kept their voices low, their eyes steady, and inched toward higher ground. Through tangled shrubs, they found a rocky slab and climbed up, brushing branches to hide their movement. Every gesture was controlled, every step calculated. The tiger circled again, sniffed the air, and, after a tense pause, flicked its tail and melted back into the jungle. They exhaled, scrapes on their shoulders, dirt on their knees, but still alive. The decision was clear: leave the jungle and return to the shore. Eventually, the air grew salty. The sound of waves reached them. The sand cooled their feet, and they set their next priorities: water, fire, and safety. Before nightfall, these three needs had to be met. Back on the shore, they spotted small fish jumping near the shallows. Ethan sharpened the tip of a long branch into a spear, while Claire twisted thin vines into a crude fishing line. After 2 hours of effort, they caught 2 fish, keeping them in a small tide pool to stay fresh. For fire, they gathered driftwood, dry leaves, and coconut husks. Claire shaped a fireboard and spun a stick in the bow drill style. Ethan blew air through a shell to feed the spark. Smoke rose, then flame caught. They wrapped the fish in leaves, cooked them on hot stones, and warmed coconut meat alongside. To replace lost fluids, they boiled water in large shells and set it to cool. As evening approached, the wind grew sharper. Waves thudded in steady rhythm. They built a lean-to shelter with bamboo-like branches, solid against the wind from the back, open toward the sea so smoke could escape and signals could be seen. A mat of leaves covered the floor, broad fronds roofed the top, and a burning log was placed near the edge to keep the fire alive all night. Claire cleaned her wound with fresh water and bound it with leaves. Ethan eased his shoulder strain with a heated stone. As stars filled the sky, the fire danced on the sand, and in the hush between the waves, sleep wrapped them in slow, fragile hope. With the first light of dawn, they made a plan to signal for rescue. Ethan drew a large circle in the sand and carved SOS in the center, each letter wide enough to be seen from the sky. Claire gathered dark driftwood, seaweed, and black sand to fill the letters, making them stand out. They stacked stones into 3 small towers so the shadows would form arrows in sunlight. Fire setup was divided: dense smoke by day, bright flame by night. Wet leaves and seaweed would produce smoke. Dry driftwood would keep the fire strong. Near the shore, they created small supply spots: shells of fresh water, leaf platters with berries and coconut, and 1 freshly caught fish from the morning shallows. By midday, heat pressed down hard. Ethan adjusted the shelter's roof, and Claire spread wet seaweed for cooling. Every half hour, they scanned the horizon for a white streak or smoke trail. No ship appeared. To keep morale up, they preserved energy, spoke little, and rechecked every setup. As evening came, the wind softened, and the waves glowed gold under the fading light. They added wet fuel to the fire for thick black smoke and lined the SOS with polished shells for better visibility. Hope remained steady. They set watch shifts for the night, keeping the flames alive and their resolve unshaken. If no ship came today, tomorrow would bring a better signal. The next morning was bright and clear. Clouds lined the horizon, and the water shimmered like silver. Ethan fed the fire with wet fuel, and thick smoke rose skyward. Claire reshaped the SOS letters, smoothing the sand and polishing the shell border to make it shine. They kept their eyes on the horizon. At first, only birds dotted the distance. Then, far out on the water, a tiny moving speck appeared, like the tip of a boat. Together, they waved their arms, lit driftwood for extra smoke, and fanned it toward the wind. The speck grew larger. The outline of a mast appeared. Rescue was possible now. Ethan carved another arrow in the sand, pointing directly to their location, while Claire waved a broad leaf to add movement to their signal. Minutes later, a ship's horn cut through the quiet sea. Figures appeared on deck, binoculars lifted, and a radio call echoed faintly. The vessel slowed, and a life raft lowered into the water. Ethan and Claire secured their shelter, moved the fire to a safe spot, and stood ready at the shore. The raft approached. Rescue crew handed them jackets and water and quickly checked their injuries. Reassurance came with firm voices. They were safe. As they climbed aboard, the shore, the SOS, and the smoke drifted behind them. The sea breeze was no longer a threat. It was the road home. Their story was no longer about being lost, but about surviving, thinking, and returning alive.